Greetings to everyone listening. My name is Dr. Eshita Sharma. I am Assistant Professor in the Physiotherapy Department of Mahatma Gandhi University of Medical Sciences and Technology. The topic that we will be discussing today is from the basics of exercise therapy. We will be talking about levers today. Now, what is a lever? Before we come to that, we should know what a simple machine is. A machine is a contrivance which enables an applied force to overcome a given resistance. A simple machine is a basic mechanical device that changes the direction or magnitude of a force. These machines make work easier by allowing us to apply less force over a greater distance or by changing the direction of the applied force. Basically, machine is anything that makes your work easy. The more output is generated by putting in less effort or less force by the person or the body. Now, levers. By definition, a lever is a rigid bar that moves around a fixed point called a fulcrum. By applying force at one point, the lever can lift or move a load at another point. Let's elaborate it further. A lever is a rigid bar which is capable of movement about a fixed point called a fulcrum, denoted by F. Work is done when a force or effort, that is denoted by E, is applied at one point on the lever. It acts upon another force or weight, that is denoted by W, acting at a second point on the lever. The perpendicular distance from the fulcrum to the effort, which is E, may be applied, and it is called as the effort's arm, and that from the fulcrum to the weight is called as the weight's arm. Let's understand this by a diagram. Now, in this diagram, as you can see, that this beam is the rigid bar, this fixed point is the fulcrum, this is the point where we will be applying our force, called as the effort, and this is the point where we will move the weight, which is denoted by W, or the load. Now, in another diagram, we can easily see that this is a fixed point fulcrum, and this is the weight that we have to lift, and this is the effort that we will be applying to move this object. Now, the distance from this fulcrum to the weight is called as the weight arm or the load arm, whereas the distance from the fulcrum to the effort is called as the effort arm. Now, levers are further classified in three orders, first, second, and the third order, and it is characterized by the relative position of fulcrum, effort, or the weight. Now, let's talk about class first lever first. The fulcrum in the class first lever is kept in between, and the weight and the effort is placed on either side of the fulcrum. Now, a classic example of such first order lever is a seesaw or a scissors. For example, in this diagram you can see that the fulcrum is situated in the between or the center, whereas the weight and the effort is placed on either side. Now, in the scissors example, you can see this is the example of lever, which is two levers are arranged such that the fulcrum is in between. Here, at this point, you will be putting on your effort so that you will be easily able to cut the object or the load that is placed on the another side. Now, moving forward to class 2 levers or the second order lever. In the second order lever, generally the weight is kept in between and the fulcrum and the effort are kept on the either side of that weight. A very good example of such kind of lever is a nutcracker or a wheelbarrow. Now, look at this diagram. In this, the fulcrum is situated at the place of the wheel, which is a fixed point, a balancing point. The weight is the load that we have to lift by the help of wheelbarrow, and this handle of the wheelbarrow is where we will be applying the effort to move this object. Now, in the nutcrackers example, we see that this point is the fixed point, which is the fulcrum, and the handle of the nutcracker is placed where we will be putting in the effort, and we will be applying the effort to break the nut, which is the weight or your force, which the output force will be applied at this point. Now, in the class 3 lever or the third order lever, the effort is between the fulcrum and the weight's arm must therefore exceed the effort's arm. A very good example of a third order lever is a tweezer. Now, in this diagram, you can see that the fulcrum is the fixed point and effort is being applied by the handle of the tweezer. By putting the effort in the center, you are able to pick any object with the help of the tweezer, which is the load applied at the other end. Now, when we're talking about levers or machine, we generally talk about mechanical advantage. What is a mechanical advantage? In very easy terms, we can understand that when you put less effort to move a bigger object, to overcome a greater resistance, it is giving us a mechanical advantage. By definition, mechanical advantage is a concept in physics that describes how much a machine can multiply the force you apply to it. And the efficacy of force in relation to a lever is dependent upon two factors: force exerted as well as the perpendicular distance from the fulcrum, which is the weights arm or the efforts arm. The force exerted, let's talk about that. The force exerted can either be the weight of the load you want to lift or the effort you apply to move that load. The amount of force directly affects how effective the lever will be. A large force applied will generally make it easier to move the load, depending on other factor, which is the distance from the fulcrum. Now, let's talk about the perpendicular distance from the fulcrum, which is the weights arm or the efforts arm. This is the distance from the fulcrum to the point where the force is applied, either the load or the effort. The weights arm refers to the distance between the fulcrum and the load, while the efforts arm refers to the distance between the fulcrum and where the effort is applied. Mechanical advantage is increased by increasing the length of the effort arm relative to the weights arm. In other words, if the distance from the fulcrum to where the effort is applied is longer than the distance from the fulcrum to the load, you will need less effort to move the load. This is why levers are so effective in multiplying force. Now, we should see and understand this by a diagram. Now, in this diagram, you see the fulcrum, that is the fixed point, is situated at the center. This is an example of a first order lever. The output force is on one side and the effort is on this side. Now, in this diagram, you can clearly see that the efforts arm is comparatively lengthier. So, we can say that there will be a mechanical advantage in this lever. And there's one other way to see how if a person is having a mechanical advantage or not, we can express it as the formula, that is, mechanical advantage is a ratio of weight to the effort, load on with the effort, or output force by the input force. Now, if the mechanical advantage is more than 1, if we apply it in this formula, we say that the machine has a mechanical advantage. If it is less than 1, we say it is having a disadvantage. And if it is equal to 1, we can say that the machine doesn't change the force. That is, the amount of force that you're applying will be overcoming the equal amount of force. Let's read this. Mechanical advantage more than 1. The machine multiplies your force, making it easier to lift or move something heavy. Mechanical advantage less than 1. The machine does not increase force but might increase speed or distance. And if mechanical advantage is equal to 1, the machine doesn't change the force. It just redirects it. Let's understand it better by a numerical example. Now, in this example, your fulcrum is in the center. The output load that you have to overcome this resistance is of 30 newtons and your input force is just 10 newtons. If we apply it in the formula that we discussed earlier of mechanical advantage, that is output force upon input force, we get the answer as 3, which is more than 1. Thus, we can say that the example we are discussing has a mechanical advantage. Now, we should note that mechanical advantage is obtained in lever of first order when the fulcrum is nearer to the weight, to the effort. That means that the effort arm is lengthier. And in all levers of second order, because in the second order, weight is at the center. So you can automatically understand if the weight is in the center and the effort is on the lengthier side, the effort arm will be longer than the weights arm and is never obtained in lever of third order, because in the third order lever, effort is in the center. So obviously, the effort arm will be lesser in length than the weights arm. Now let's discuss about the levers in human body. In the body, a lever is represented by a bone, which is capable of movement about a fulcrum formed at the articulating surface of a joint. The effort which works the lever is supplied by the force of a muscular contraction applied at the point of insertion to the bone, while the weight may be either at the center of gravity of the part moved or of the object to be lifted. Now, if we see the example of a lever in the human body, we will be first studying about the first order lever. It is commonly called as a lever of stability. In this lever, a state of equilibrium can be achieved with or without mechanical advantage. A very good example of this order lever is the nodding movement at the atlanto-occipital joint. When we nod our head, the joint where our skull meets your spine, that is the atlanto-occipital joint, act as the fulcrum. The muscle at the back of your neck provide the effort to lift the head, and the load is the weight of your head. Let's see this in this diagram. Now, in this diagram, this is a fixed point. This is a fixed point. We denote this as the fulcrum. The weight of the skull will be the resistance that you have to overcome when you want to move your skull in the nodding movement. And these are the neck muscles that will be applying the effort or putting up the force to overcome this resistance. Now, since the fulcrum is situated in between, the effort is situated and the weight is situated on either side of the fulcrum. This is a classic example of a first order lever. Moving forward to the second order lever. Second order lever is commonly called as the lever of power. There must always be a mechanical advantage in these type of levers. A very common example of this lever is when you stand on your tiptoes. Your metatarsophalangeal joint act as the fulcrum, the weight of your body is the load, and the calf muscle contract to apply the effort at the tendocalcaneum junction. Now let's understand this by the diagram. Look here, you can see that the metatarsophalangeal joint is the fixed point, the fulcrum, and the load is at the ankle that you have to lift or the weight that you have to overcome, and the effort is put in by the contraction of the gastrocnemius soleus, that is your calf muscle. So, moving forward, we will be discussing about the third order lever, which is commonly known as the lever of velocity. This is the most commonly found lever in the human body than any other lever. This lever always has a mechanical disadvantage. The loss of mechanical advantage is then compensated by speed and range of motion. A very good example to understand the third order lever is when you lift something with your hand. Your elbow joint acts as the fulcrum and your muscle, that is the brachialis or the biceps brachii, will exert the force to lift the load. That is the object in your hand, which is your weight. Look in this diagram, you can see that elbow joint is the fixed point, which is the fulcrum, and this is a load or the weight that you have to overcome by the resistance that is offered by the load. Now the effort will be put in by the force generated by the muscular contraction of your muscle. Don't get confused here, because the effort is putting the contraction at the point of insertion in the center. Thus, we can say that the effort is in the center, fulcrum is on either side, and the weight on the other side. Now, we will be talking about benefits of lever in the body. Levers in the human body are essential for movement, allowing muscles to apply force more efficiently. They provide several benefits, including increased force output. Levers allow small muscle contractions to generate large movements or great force. For example, the calf muscle lifting the body on the toes used a second-class lever to amplify the force. Second is the enhanced movement range. Levers can increase the range of motion, allowing limbs to move more freely. This is particularly important for activities like running or reaching. Mechanical advantage. Depending on the type of lever, the body can maximize speed or strength. For example, third-class lever, that is the most common in your body, sacrifice force to maximize speed and distance. Ideal for actions like swinging a bat or lifting weights. Then comes the benefit of energy efficiency. Using lever reduces the amount of energy required for movement, minimizing muscle fatigue and allowing sustained activity. And lastly, control movement. Lever allow for smooth, coordinated movement, balancing force and range of motion, which is crucial for precise action like gripping or throwing. And with that, we will conclude today's topic of levers. I hope you followed and understood. Thank you.